Hello there, I'm Charles Clark with Veeam Software, and today I'd like to run you through a product demonstration of the Veeam Management Pack for VMware. The first question to be answered is, what is the Veeam Management Pack for VMware? And conceptually it's really very simple. It's deep enterprise level monitoring, reporting and capacity analysis of your VMware virtualization environment represented inside System Center Operations Manager, and by extension the rest of the System Center framework. Now, to explain why I think that's kind of a big deal, I like to use the following metaphor. Think about a virtual machine as being an egg. Actually, more technically, an egg shell. Inside that eggshell, we have the yolk and we have the egg white or the albumin, and they roughly correspond to the operating system and the all critical applications that sit on top of it. So if we look at System Center Operations Manager today, it does a phenomenal job of monitoring the native operating system, which is typically a Microsoft-based operating system, and the applications, the Windows-based applications that sit on top of that. It does a great job of that. Native management packs pull out that information, present it, and we can use that as the basis for our monitoring and reporting. But if I'm an operations manager and those workloads are virtualized, then I need to see not only the operating system and the applications, honestly, I need to see the whole chicken, right? As well as the eggshell and the yolk and the albumin inside it. So the value proposition for the vManager Pack is very simple. It really allows us to go from hardware through storage, networking, virtualization layer, hypervisor, virtual machine, operating system, and applications inside that operating system. It's really an end-to-end monitoring system and fills out what System Center Operations Manager does natively. So it's really just about bringing the VMware environment and the System Center environment together to give you a holistic view of monitoring inside the environment. Now, the vManagement Pack was designed to address some key challenges. The first of these challenges is around VMware visibility, so actually pulling VMware information into System Center, but really it's a lot more than that. It's about capacity planning, so you can make the right decisions about your VMware virtualization environment using that single framework. It's about helping reduce missed SLAs, making the organization more efficient in terms of managing service level agreements, responding to calls, closing tickets, streamlining IT operations, as well as ensuring that the infrastructure is hitting the service level agreements. And all of those really encapsulated together are covered under data center inefficiency. So make sure monitoring is efficient, make sure the infrastructure is running efficiently, and make sure what the infrastructure is supporting is optimized so that you can get the absolute best out of your investment in your VMware infrastructure. Okay, so the first of the challenges that the Veeam Management Pack for VMware is designed to address is the lack of VMware visibility inside System Center. Let me just flip over to my demo environment here. So you can see that we're looking at the System Center Operations Manager console, and into this console I have imported the Veeam Management Pack for VMware. Now the first thing that I want to point out is this wee padlock on the node in the operator's console here. So this essentially is telling us that the Management Pack is sealed. So what that basically means for everyone watching this is that all the views that I'm about to show you are out of the box, and I haven't had to create or customize any of these. So you can see that we've laid out a whole bunch of pre-built dashboards, views, performance views, really for everything that you might be remotely interested in inside the VMware environment. So we really worked hard to put the information at your fingertips without having to do a lot of customization and custom dashboard building to be able to get a real clear and concise view of what's happening inside the VMware environment. So I just want to highlight a couple of my favorite views. The first view that I want to highlight for you is the view that everybody loves, and this is the topology view. So what we do here is we dynamically update the topology of the VMware environment and present that inside the Operations Manager console graphically. So it means that I get this graphical representation of my VMware environment color-coded by health, and I can drill into specific areas and identify problems. So for example, here you can see that on this cluster here, I have an error condition, so I can use problem path resolution, which is a native Ops Manager feature, to drill in and see specifically where that problem might lie. So in this case, it seems to lie inside the resource pool VDI, and I can have a look and then use traditional Ops Manager troubleshooting techniques to identify what the issue is. So here I'm using Health Explorer, and you can see that the uptime for that VM seems to be in an error condition. I'm also going to have a warning condition relating to snapshot usage, where we'll show you both the age and the size of the snapshot, along with potential resolutions for cleaning up that snapshot, and I might use that as a resolution task later on. Now, of course, the beauty of the Veeam Management Pack for VMware is that it really ties the native underlying Windows environment or non-Windows environment with the VMware environment. So let me give you a quick example of this. Here, I'm just going to go into another environment. I'm going to look inside my server's resource pool in this case, but I could look at the host, and we can see all the different VMs that are resident within that resource pool. And as I drill in, I can actually see under each of those VMs health state for the native Windows object and for the native management packs that are resident on that Windows object. So here, let me just zoom out just a wee bit, make that a bit clearer for you. So here you can see, I'm seeing the server's resource pool, I'm seeing all the servers in the resource pool, I'm seeing the SQL Windows object underneath here, and inside that SQL's Windows object I can see anything that's in a non-optimal condition. So here, for example, I have a warning condition for a SQL server, and I can again use traditional Ops Manager troubleshooting techniques to try and figure out what that is. For example, I could open an alert view and see that we've got a couple of alerts there that I might want to use as the basis for remediation. Now, there are other topology views available within the Veeam Management Pack. One of my personal favorites is the storage topology view. So this is essentially doing the same thing as we just saw, but it's laying it out based on storage. So for example, I could have a look inside this cluster, and I can see all the data stores, and I can see health state for the data store. So here I have a data store here in an error condition that's rolled up to the parent object. And again, I can use my Health Explorer or something to figure out why it is that that particular data store is in an error condition. One of my favorite features though is the fact that once we've identified that data store in an error condition, we do actually link the VMs on that data store to the data store. So it means that I get a really clear and easy to understand diagrammatical view of the VMware environment that I can use for troubleshooting. I mean, heck, I can even dump it out into Visio and use it as the basis for documentation. The last of the views that I just want to touch on from a topology perspective is the network topology view. And again, same sort of thing. We're seeing the different VM networks, and we're seeing the association of the virtual machines on those VM networks. So looking from a topology view gives us a great sort of at-a-glance capability to identify where specific problems might be, or at least just to let me get my arms around the entire environment. Of course, topology views aren't the only thing that we provide in the Veeam Management Pack for VMware. We provide a range of state views as well. So we have traditional state views. For example, I can take a look here at the all data stores state view. So here we're providing the health state of the data store, the name, along with some more useful inventory information. But we also provide new SCOM 2012 style state views as well. So for example, if I take a look at my storage, vSphere storage node, I can see the data stores grouped by vCenter data center and then by data store cluster, all including health state and all including useful inventory information. So at a glance, I can see where the data stores are, I can see the health of those data stores as well. Now, the last of the things, just to keep on the theme with data stores, the last of the examples I want to give of visibility into the VMware environment actually relates to reporting. So reporting, of course, is a key element of operations manager, a key element of data center operations generally. And at Veeam, we've put in a whole bunch of really useful reports against the VMware environment. Now, why I think they're useful rather than just a bunch of reports is that we've worked pretty hard to make the data really easy to understand. It's not just a bunch of figures and graphs that are going to be thrown at you. It's going to be data that actually, a VMware operator or a data center operator can take, read, analyze, understand, and then make use of. So one of the examples that I just want to highlight here is the data store space usage heat map. Now, here I'm looking at the heat map from Sunday of the previous week to Saturday of the previous week. So I'm basically saying, okay, give me last week's heat map. I've applied a couple of growth threshold parameters here, which will become evident in a minute, and then I can just go ahead and run that report. Now, I've actually pre-run it here, and I just want to talk you through some of the results. So here we can see the heat map for all my data stores, which are listed on the left. And very basically, what the heat map is doing for me is it's saying, okay, here are the size of the VMs on those data stores, and here is how fast they are growing. And you can see the size relative to all the other data stores that are on that, all the other VMs that are on that data store. So for example, here I can see, this virtual machine here, which is a VDI session, AU VDI 13, is relatively small, it's number one, but it's red, which means that the rate of growth is fast relative to other data stores, other VMs that are on the same data store. If I take a look at the next data store down, which is actually hosting some server workloads, I can see the same sort of thing. So here actually I have something that I might want to look at. I have AU Backup 02, which is one of my backup servers, which is the biggest VM on that data store and is also the fastest growing. So we've made it easy at a glance to see what's happening inside the VMware environment here. For this example is from a storage perspective, and very quickly, without being, having to sort of munge figures inside Excel or have to really do much interpretation, I can almost immediately figure out where the hotspots are inside my VMware environment. So the next area of focus is really a critical area of focus for operations guys, for virtualization guys, and that's around capacity planning. Capacity planning is a key element of any virtualization environment because it really drives your decision-making process in terms of how you're going to resource things, how you're going to provision things, and of course making sure that you can be proactive in your monitoring strategy to ensure that something doesn't become such a problem that it causes an outage to the virtualization environment when we're dealing with performance bottlenecks. Now, the Veeam Management Pack for VMware includes a number of reports that help us get a handle on capacity planning. And I just want to demonstrate a couple of these reports for you. So you can see here, if I flip over to my demo, you can see here that I'm looking inside the Operations Manager console. You can see that I'm looking at the reporting node, and I'm looking at the Veeam VMware Capacity Planning report. So these are available out of the box with the Veeam Management Pack for VMware. They just get imported along with the rest of the Veeam Management Packs for VMware. So the first one that I just would like to demonstrate for you is the virtual machine capacity prediction. So let me just go ahead and run that. So what this is going to help me do is figure out where can I squeeze virtual machines into my environment when I need to provision a new service, or when I need to run up some new virtual machines. I need to create a new sort of VApp that's going to deliver value for my business. Where can I put those virtual machines, and what's the impact of those virtual machines going to be on the existing infrastructure? So here I'm providing parameters to look 30 days back and 30 days forward. I want to analyze the data based on cluster utilization and data store utilization, and I also want to provide some thresholds here so that I can keep the utilization underneath those thresholds, or understand whether or not utilization will go above those thresholds after I've provisioned those virtual machines. So I'm going to set thresholds for CPU, for memory, and data store free space, and IOPS. Now the key thing that I need to add here is virtual machines that essentially provide a template for me. And essentially I want to say, okay, this is my virtual machine that I am going to add duplicates of effectively into my VMware environment on those clusters and data stores. So I may come in and add a single, virtual machine, or I may add groups of virtual machines. So I might say, okay, well, I'm going to add 2 virtual machines that look like this. Now I know that these virtual machines are fairly hungry in terms of resource, but I'm just going to add those in, and now I'm going to be able to see, am I going to be able to squeeze more of those types of virtual machines, that set of virtual machines, into my environment. So this is all using standard native SCOM reporting. There's no magical Veeam reporting database or interface. It's all done just using standard SCOM tools. So let's have a look at some of the results, and let me just talk you through these a wee bit. So you can see, first of all, summary information. So you can see the clusters that I have and the data stores that I have, some information about those. And you can also see the sample workload described. So the sample workload in this case is represented by those 2 VMs. Between them they've got 8 vCPUs, and they're using this amount of RAM and this amount of disk space. So the next area actually I think is probably my favorite, and it's kind of a summary area. And what this is telling me is, how many of those sets of VMs can I put into the environment, and where I can't put them into the environment, what's the constraining resource? So for example, I can see here that in the support lab cluster, I could fit 3 of those sets of VMs, so in other words 6 VMs, but the constraining resource may be memory. And if we look at data store utilization, you can see actually that I'm running my data stores so slim that I actually can only fit 1 set of those VMs onto this first data store here, EU ESX01 DS1. Now, if I need to analyze those findings a little further, then of course I can use the navigation menu on the left-hand side to drill in and see more detailed information. So here, for example, we can see information relating to the memory and CPU on that support lab cluster. So we can see what the predicted usage will be based on and what the thresholds are that I'd already defined, and how many VMs can be added. So you can see here that, from a CPU perspective, I seem to have plenty of resource, but less so from a RAM perspective. I can only add 3 of those VM sets, as we saw in the earlier results. And of course, as we look at the data store utilization, same sort of format. I get an overview, and we can look at the free space on the data store, and in summary, we can figure out the VM sets that can be added. In this case, only 1 set can be added to this particular data store from a free space perspective. But actually, we're pretty good from an IOPS perspective. So if I was able to free up some disk space on that data store, I may be able to add more than 1 of those VM sets to that particular data store. So really easy for me to sort of at a glance see, where I can squeeze stuff, and when I do squeeze stuff, I can get an idea of what the predicted utilization is going to be, so that I can make the right decisions about where to provision VMs in the environment, rather than doing it, the way that I've always done it, which is, in all honesty, pretty much guesswork. Now, performance forecasting, of course, relates not just to what-if scenarios, but it also relates to, looking at that performance forward over time. So Veeam have included a couple of reports, the performance forecasting for data stores and for vSphere clusters, that help us do that. So to give you a couple of examples here. So this is the performance forecast for vSphere clusters. Again, I'm looking back 30 days and forward 30 days. I've applied a couple of thresholds here, and I'm going to run this against all my VMware clusters, both for CPU utilization and for memory. And you can see that I pre-run the results, and we can see them here. So again, a summary of the results. I've got a couple of clusters and a few hosts. You can see what sort of available resource I've got there. And again, this is my favorite part right up at the top here is just this kind of summary. So based on that usage going forward, do I have any constraining resources? And if I do have constraining resources, bear in mind this is based on historical analysis, when are they going to run out? So we can see from a CPU, in the SE lab perspective, I'm pretty good. But in the support lab perspective, you can see that my used memory is going to run out at some point in the next 130 to 154 days. Now, if I need to buy more RAM and I'm coming up for an expenditure cycle, I now know that in a few months' time, I'm going to need some more RAM. So, I can start building my business case. I can start getting the forms together for, a requisition order to beef up the RAM in those hosts, or indeed to add another host to that particular cluster. Now, of course, there may be particular outliers that are impacting those results. So in the Veeam MP, we don't just sort of give you the results and that's it. It's a flat number. We actually do look at the historical trending and show you if there may be any spikes, any outliers, monthly processing, weekly processing, backup jobs, something along those lines that might be impacting those results. So we can see over the last 30 days, or over the last week in this case, how that utilization has actually been trending, and then I can see if there are any outliers. So here both lines for CPU and for memory look pretty flat, so that's probably an accurate estimation based on the parameters that I provided. We'll do the same thing for data stores too. So here I'm looking not just at free space for my data stores, but also at read and write latency and data store IOPS. So when I pull up those results, again, similar format, we can see a summary, and my favorite part, the summary of what the constraining resource might be. And I love this section where we're actually making recommendations. So you can see here that this second data store in the list, AU ESX02, has failed based on IOPS, and actually it's already hit the threshold had defined for IOPS. And so we've made some recommendations in terms of reducing the IOPS load. And of course, if I need to go deeper than that, if I need to look at a specific data store, I can then just drill in using the navigation bar on the left and see the data relevant to that specific data store. Again, looking for any outliers, looking for anything that might indicate something that was abnormal and might have impacted the results. Now, capacity planning for those resources is one thing, but one of the things I really like to do is think about how I'm going to allocate my human resources over the course of the next week or month, or identify where they should have been allocated previously so I can make the right decisions going forward. So the Veeam Management Pack for VMware really does give you some insight into that when we're dealing with a virtualization environment. So one of my favorite reports is this one here, the top noisy vSphere objects. And what this is going to do, very simply, is looking at a specific time frame. So may go from just last week, just to keep it simple. And I can see where the troublemakers are inside my environment, for want of a better phrase. So I may look in this example just at virtual machines, and I want to see the top 20. Let's make that top 10. Noisy virtual machines in terms of alerts and events that they're spitting up to Ops Manager. Okay, so I can see that the my top troublemaker is this guy here, AU SPS02. And if I want to see what his top trouble is, so in other words, the thing that's keeping that VM generating all those alerts, I can actually drill in and see what that is too. So here we can see that it's virtual machine compute latency analysis. So what I would probably want to do from here is then drill in and I can actually sort of use a drill down report and look at those particular alerts historically, or go in and look at the alerts inside the operator's console and do look at something a bit more immediate. Here you can see I'm looking at the alerts by severity per day for that particular machine. And then we can do it the other way around. So if I need to figure out where my top troubles are and allocate the right skill set inside my team to be able to fix those troubles, that maybe kept recurring last week and I don't want to see them again this week, then I can do that too. So I might look again just over the course of the last week. I'll do it for hosts this time. And I can see, what it is that's been keeping my hosts awake at night. And so here we can see it's a vSphere host memory swapping analysis alert that is that's been my highest over the course of the last week. And we can see that mainly they've come, in fact they've all in this case come from this particular host. So I might go and look at that host, provision some more memory or move virtual machines around to alleviate some some memory pressure there. So we can see that from a capacity planning standpoint, not only does the Veeam Management Pack for VMware provide reports to help with performance capacity planning and what if scenarios, but also can help us make the right decisions about where to allocate team members, based on the appropriate skill set. Alright, so the next thing we wanted to touch on was around missed SLAs or service level agreements. So these are a big deal because, as an operations person, I need to be able to, prove to the business, first of all, that I have a handle on what is happening inside the virtualization environment, but also I need to prove and analyze things like uptime. I need to make sure that resources are performing optimally, and because there may be SLAs based around that. We also may want to, help improve response time, and there may be service level agreements around response time and the time it takes, for example, to have a troubleshooting ticket opened, to have a troubleshooting ticket closed, and we want to reduce that time as well. So all of those I would bracket under service level agreements, and the Veeam Management Pack for VMware includes a number of different mechanisms to help us hit those SLAs, and I just want to demo a couple of them here for you. So if I flip over into my demo, I'll start with reporting side of things. So when we think of service level agreements, often what we think of, or one of the things that we think of is uptime. So I may look, for example, at my uptime statistics report. This is for virtual machines. And what this is going to do is really just as the name suggests, it's going to let me analyze the uptime for those VMs. So let's just go from last week up till today. I'm going to look at all my virtual machines in this particular example, and I can set a service level object for uptime for those VMs. So I may set that to be 90%. And again, it's all standard Ops Manager reporting, so all standard stuff. And I get the results back, and here we can see all my virtual machines. And I can see the virtual machines that have good uptime and bad uptime based on those results. Now, of course, these reports are context sensitive, just as they are natively in Ops Manager. So I could just click one of those nodes, and I can very quickly come in, and for this particular virtual machine, APAC DC01, I can actually analyze and trend what my uptime was. So I can see that on the 15th of April in this particular case, I only had about 40% uptime, which is why that's looking a little bit ropey, and I can see that what the unmonitored or downtime was here on that particular day. So getting a handle on that uptime is one thing. Of course, looking at performance of the virtual machine and ensuring that performance metrics are hit is another. So Veeam have included a whole range of performance history reports that allow us to look at the performance of virtual machines, hosts, clusters, data stores, deliver that information clearly and concisely, and then allow you to use that to sort of prove that the environment has been working at an optimal level. So I might look at a specific metric here. Let's go for host CPU performance. Now I could look at a couple of hosts here. I have one of them added already. I'll just add the other one to the report parameters. Okay, and I might be interested in a particular CPU value. So, let's say I want to look at CPU latency, and pressure. So these are good indications of how stressed out my CPU is, basically, on those particular hosts. And I can go ahead and run that, and we'll see that very neatly charted over time for the metrics, for pressure, and for both those hosts. So I get that sort of graphical analysis that I can use to say, hey, you know what, we kept over the last week, month, year, generally we kept our CPU latency below a certain percentage through the appropriate and correct management of the virtualized environment. So I can use it to create that kind of report. Okay, now if I'm looking for something that's a little bit more, how can I put it, big picture, so something that doesn't go into that granular metric type information in a report, then of course one of the things that Ops Manager lets us do is create what are called service level tracking objects. So here you can see I've created one already for my VMware service levels. I created this manually just using standard SCOM techniques. But what that then does is it will allow me to create service level tracking objects for dashboarding and for reporting purposes. So here you can see I've created a couple of service level dashboards. Here's one for my clusters. And what this is doing is really looking at two key metrics, performance generally and availability generally across all my clusters. So I can see that I am hitting the SLAs for my performance. And it also looks like I'm hitting the SLAs nicely for availability for my clusters as well. In this case, it's over the last 24 hours. Now, if I needed to see that over a longer historical period, then of course I could do that using reporting. Now, the next element that I wanted to touch on in terms of hitting service level agreements really relates to rapid response and the ability to take information and make good decisions about it quickly to close off an alert and to unlock a bottleneck or resolve a particular problem. So the Veeam Management Pack for VMware does a great job in presenting the right sort of information inside the alert description so that an operator can make the right decisions. Let me just take a quick example here. So here you can see I've got an alert for resource pool memory usage analysis just being created. So I can just open those alert details. And what this is going to do is it's going to tell me not only the alert description, so it's telling me that this resource pool has breached a usage threshold by using 98%, etc. There's some statistics about it. But what I love about this is that right here inside the alert description, it will tell me the top VM consumers that live inside that resource pool. So I can see that these two virtual machines are consuming the RAM inside the resource pool, and they're the offenders, if you like, that have pushed it over the threshold. So I can now make the right decision about, the VMs. Maybe I need to sort of resize the VM slightly, or maybe I need to migrate one of those VMs off onto another host to alleviate that bottleneck in memory on the resource pool. Now, if I need to analyze that further, I can actually use a context-sensitive task. Here we have the resource pool memory usage analysis task. You can see we've included a few out of the box. And what this is going to do is actually, pull together some key metrics that I'm going to need. It's going to pull together the memory utilization generally for the resource pool, which is in the upper left here. You can see that it's up to almost 100%. That's probably dangerous. It's going to show me the VMs in the pool and track their memory utilization over time. And it's also going to bring in alerts for not only the resource pool, but also for any particular virtual machines that live in that resource pool. Now, in this particular dashboard, I only have the alert that relates to the resource pool. But for example, if I'd set inside the native Ops Manager agent a threshold for VMs, that had tripped over those thresholds, then I'd see those alerts appearing inside this dashboard too. So what this is doing is really sort of bringing everything from an operator's perspective right at my fingertips. I can look in here and I can quickly make the right decisions about where the bottlenecks lie inside my environment. Let me find another analysis for you here. Yes, here's a great one. Virtual machine snapshot usage analysis. So here you can see that we've, a snapshot has been created. We're seeing the age of the snapshot. So that's, the oldest snapshot was taken 84 hours ago, which is a pretty long time for a snapshot. Now, I happen to know that this virtual machine is a replica, so I would expect to see snapshots on there, but I might not expect to see it with other, with other virtual machines. So again, what I can do is drill in, and using a context-sensitive task, I could launch snapshot analysis, just for argument's sake. And here, again, we can see the size of the snapshots over the course of the last 24 hours. and we can see the virtual machine used storage over the last 24 hours as well. So I can see how much storage that VM is using. Actually, it looks like we've maybe consolidated snapshots earlier today, and the size has gone down. It's spiked back up, which is perhaps what's caused that alert. And of course, I can see any alerts that relate to the virtual machine inside the console here as well. So I could drill in and see what relates to this particular virtual machine. Here you can see I have a seemingly unrelated MAC address conflict. Okay, so the idea is that when you're trying to get stuff done quickly, you're trying to hit those SLAs, you're trying to keep IT operations streamlined and as efficient as possible, then the Veeam Management Pack really helps with reporting and analysis, monitoring and alerting that lets operators make the right decisions quickly, provides valuable context to allow them to do that, and make sure that you hit your SLAs and hit your SLA bonus for the month. Score! Okay, so the last area that I want to touch on is around data center inefficiencies. So this is not only driving inefficiencies out of your data center or out the virtualization portion of your data center, but really about helping the whole monitoring process be more efficient. So getting the right context to quickly make decisions, as well as getting accurate data to make decisions about how to streamline and reduce bottlenecks inside your virtualization infrastructure. So there's a few things here that I want to touch on. First thing I'd like to do is just have a wee look inside the Ops Manager reporting console, and again I'm going back to my Veeam VMware analysis reports node. So one of the reports that I can run inside here is just fantastic for helping me slim down virtual machines. And we've probably all been in a scenario where a business owner comes to us and says, or a business unit owner comes and says, I need a new VM and it needs to have this spec, it needs to be the King Kong of all virtual machines. And as virtualization admins, as operations people, we know that probably we don't really need to have it that highly spec'd. So what the right sizing report does is it helps me do exactly that. It helps me right size the virtual machine based on historical performance data. So let me just give you an example here. Okay, so you can see that I'm going to look historically, so I'm just going to look from last week up to today. I'm going to look for RAM and for CPU, and I want to do the analysis against all my virtual machines, and we'll identify the top 25 that can be right sized. Let me just zoom that out just a wee bit. Okay, so as we take a little look inside here, we can see some interesting results. So we've processed 130 VMs. You can see that we've identified 7 oversized VMs, and we can claim back 7.2 gigs of RAM. Now that's quite a chunk of RAM that I could allocate to other resources on those hosts. So here we can see exactly those virtual machines. So you can see, there's a Windows AD virtual machine that has currently has a RAM allocation of 4 gigs, but actually is really only using half a gig's worth of RAM. So it looks like from there we could reclaim 3.2 gigs of RAM. Now there may be peaks and troughs over the reporting interval that might lean me towards making sure that it does have that amount of resource available to it at all times. So what I can do is just drill into the context in the report and then see that. So I can see if there's any particular peaks or troughs that might be skewing the results so that I can make the right decisions about right sizing those virtual machines, in this case for RAM. And we can see similar data for CPU as well. And you can see I can reclaim 27 CPU resources, and here are the virtual machines that I can reclaim those vCPUs from based on historical usage over the last week. So when I'm looking to do consolidation projects, I'm looking to group more virtual machines together on a single host or in a single cluster, having this information so that I can slim down the VMs to make space for others is absolutely invaluable. Now, Of course, it's not just running virtual machines that might need to be slimmed down, but there may be virtual machines that are ripe for consolidation, or maybe even for powering off altogether. So Veeam provide us with the idle VMs virtual machine report, and this is going to show me the virtual machines that aren't really doing anything inside the environment. Again, I can set some thresholds inside here in terms of disk usage or active memory, so I can actually see the virtual machines that are putting zero effectively through the the zero traffic effectively that the virtual machine is having to deal with. So I can figure out who is truly idle, who I could probably switch off, or at the very least consolidate those virtual machines together. So you can see here that I've got 34 VMs that we would identify as being idle based on these utilization statistics. The cool thing about this report is that we'll also identify wasted space on data stores. So I can see the virtual machines that are idle on, for example, this data store, and I can see that, there's like 700 gigs worth of space for idle VMs. What a complete waste of resource. So I've now got the ability to drill in, look at those particular VMs, and point out, the highest offenders, and figure out who I may or may not be able to have switched off. So of course I can drill in to a specific virtual machine, and I can see the key metrics for that virtual machine. So CPU actually does have something going through it for this particular VM, but not much. And we can see the memory active, disk usage, and network usage. So this VM is almost completely idle. That's what my mother used to say about me. So it might be right for getting switched off or being, consolidated. Great for identifying those, zombie VMs. I can also identify that through switched off VMs for VMs that effectively, could be deleted essentially from and their data removed from the data stores. Now, the other thing about driving inefficiency is about being able to streamline the entire monitoring process. Now, we had a little look at alerts in the previous demo, but I just want to, highlight this again, that if I want my monitoring solution to be efficient, then really context is all important. So for example, I can take a look here at snapshot usage analysis and have the context of that snapshot be presented for me in the analysis dashboard like we saw in the previous demo. So I can see all the alerts for that virtual machine. Oh, there's a VM error for the clone. I can see all the used storage. But I might also need a little bit more context than that. So for example, I can take a look at a particular data store. Let's just pick this one here. It's called software. Now, the alert that I've received relating to that data store is for unknown files. Now, I want to very quickly see that, okay, well, first of all, what does that mean? So it's telling me that right now this data store has files totaling 103 gigs in size that are unknown. So it could be orphan snapshots, orphan VMs, the administrator's MP3 collection. It could be anything. But I want to find out what that is, right? So traditionally what I might do then is go off and run a script or browse the data store, try and figure out where those files were. But with the Veeam Management Pack for VMware, I can actually run a context sensitive task to scan the data store for unknown files. And what this task is going to do is, well, tell me what those unknown files are. I can then output that output or export that output to something else and then maybe use that as the basis for remediation. So I could go to the data store owner, present them and say, hey, did you know that you're chewing up my beautiful data store with all this stuff on here that really we don't need. So I can actually see the files and I can even see their size over on the right hand side there. So immeasurably useful for really just streamlining the monitoring process and making sure I'm getting the right information, the right information in the hands of the right people very quickly. Okay, so hopefully we've given you an idea of what's included inside the Veeam Management Pack for Operations Manager and how it helps address the 4 key challenges that VMware operators, admins and operations managers face today. Thank you.